She was the singer of a famous band, beautiful and captivating, yet arrogant and domineering. She was always looking down on others and criticizing them. However, not long after, she was brutally murdered in a horrific manner. When the truth was finally revealed, the ugliness of human nature was laid bare. That day, the teenage detective Hajime took Miyuki to Mito Villa. They had been asked by the band's manager, Yuka, to find a set of sheet music left behind by the renowned composer Mito. According to Yuka, the collection was called Devil's Suite, and it was the composer's final work. When Mito was alive, he had a habit of writing a poem to capture his first impression of every piece he composed. Yuka then played the recording Mito had made of the poem for the first piece of Devil's Suite. Thunder split the night sky, only to make the darkness even deeper. The feast of the demon world descended gracefully. Before the dark altar stood a sacrifice. While a knight holding a sacred key was destined never to become a sacrifice to the devil. After arriving at the villa, Yuka asked the two of them to wait in the living room while she went to her teacher's room to retrieve the sheet music. However, after waiting for quite some time, Hajime and Miyuki still hadn't seen her return. Just then, a scream suddenly rang out. Hajime and Miyuki immediately rushed toward the sound. But before they could get very far, the entire villa suddenly plunged into darkness. Hajime turned his head and saw Yuka standing frozen at the entrance to the study in the basement. Hajime looked down the stairs, and a blonde-haired man was lying there. According to Yuka, he was also one of Mito's students, named Michael. He was the band's composer. As soon as she finished speaking, the others in the villa quickly rushed over as well. With the lights illuminating the scene, everyone finally saw the horrifying crime scene in its entirety. Yuka gasped in horror. The scene looked as though a demon had devoured a living person, and it was almost identical to what Mito had described in the first poem. Just then, Officer Kengo stepped out of the shadows, reciting one of Mito's lines. The knight chosen as tonight's sacrifice was holding a sacred key, but he would never become food for the demon. After saying this, Kengo actually found a key clutched in the victim's hand. He then reported the situation to the police station. Hajime couldn't understand why Kengo was there. Yuka explained that she and Kengo had been friends since college, and she had specifically invited him to help them search for Mito's sheet music. At that moment, the police station sent them an update. The road leading to the villa had been blocked by a landslide, and the earliest the police could arrive would be the following morning. This meant that everyone was trapped inside the villa. Yuka then introduced Hajime and Kengo to the other people staying there. They were the butler Yozo, the band's conductor Takehiko, the singer Yuri, and the violinist Arisa, along with the deceased Michael. They were all key members of the band. They had all gathered there for one reason: to find Mito's final work, Devil's Suite. At that moment, Yuri began questioning Yuka. She demanded to know what right an assistant had to come looking for the sheet music, and why she had even brought a police officer and 2 high school students with her. Seeing the situation, Butler Yozo quickly stepped in to explain. He was the one who had asked Yuka to find people to help, because Devil's Suite had been the work Mito had devoted his entire life to. Takehiko, who was standing nearby, wanted to smoke a cigarette to ease the tension, but this immediately angered Yuri. She complained that secondhand smoke was extremely harmful, and demanded to know what would happen if it damaged her singing voice. With that, she stormed out of the living room. Arisa also got up and said she needed to return to her room to practice the violin. Just then, the electricity in the villa was finally restored, and the melodious sound of a violin could be heard coming from upstairs. Yuka was grateful to Yozo for stepping in to defuse the situation. After all, she had been the one who took the initiative to invite everyone to search for the sheet music, but Yozo told her not to worry about it, then led everyone upstairs toward their rooms. Yuka explained that her teacher Mito had a strange personality, but there was no denying that the music he created was extraordinary, and Devil's Suite was the culmination of his life's work. Because of this, Mito had barely left his home during the 6 months before his death. Moreover, Mito had never married and had no contact with any relatives. His daily life was entirely taken care of by Yozo. After returning to their room, Miyuki noticed that the key in Hajime's hand seemed identical to the one found in Michael's hand. Hajime explained that it was the key to their guest room. The key Michael was clutching was presumably the key to his own room as well, but that raised an important question. Michael had fallen violently from such a great height, yet he had still been clutching the key tightly in his hand. That meant the killer had most likely placed the key in his hand after his death, deliberately making Michael's death correspond to the first poem of Devil's Suite. Kengo thought it might have been Michael's dying message. Just then, a scream came from downstairs. Everyone hurried down, only to find Yuka standing at the entrance to the storage room, her face filled with terror. This time, the victim was Yuri. A knight's helmet had been placed over her head, while spinning tops had been arranged around her hands and feet. Kingo explained that this scene corresponded to Mito's second poem. A knight clad in armor advances fearlessly to destroy the demon. The demon unleashes a curse and chants the song of hell, leaving the knight in unbearable agony. After the murders, everyone gathered in the main hall. Kingo told everyone that after carefully examining the scene, he had determined that the doors and windows were locked from the inside when both murders occurred. That meant the killer had to be one of the people in the villa. As soon as he said this, Takehiko's expression suddenly changed. Meanwhile, Arisa burst out laughing and pointed out that Takehiko was a terrible actor. She suspected that he was secretly celebrating because he now had one less rival for the inheritance. Arisa openly accused Takehiko of being the killer. The two immediately began arguing. Kingo stated that everyone present was a suspect, because none of them had a solid alibi. That night, Hajime lay in bed thinking about the case. Why had the killer gone to such great lengths to recreate the scenes described in the poems? Suddenly, a thought struck him. There was still a third poem in Devil's Suite, which meant someone else was going to die. Just then, Miyuki opened the door and told Hajime that the bathroom was free, so he could take a bath and relax. But the moment he stepped out of the room, he saw Arisa standing in the main hall, staring intently at Mito's portrait on the wall. When she saw Hajime, Arisa didn't bother hiding her feelings. She bluntly said that the great musician was nothing more than a strict demon. Even the slightest mistake during their daily practice would result in the students being mercilessly beaten and scolded by him. Hajime never expected such a violent side from the famous musician. Arisa, however, said that art and human nature were not necessarily in conflict. At that moment, Kingo announced from downstairs that he had found the sheet music, but after Takehiko examined it, he realized that it was merely another one of Mito's works, not Devil's Suite. Kingo had found it in the corner of the study, and it had most likely been brought there by Michael before he was killed. Seeing that something was wrong with Arisa's expression, Yozo offered to escort her back to her room to rest. After the two left, Takehiko remarked that there was definitely something going on between them. He then added that since the sheet music was part of the inheritance Mito had left behind, he should naturally be the one to inherit it. Yuka couldn't help quietly complaining that Takehiko was going too far. She also revealed that Arisa had lost both of her parents when she was young and had grown up dependent on others. Later, Mito took notice of her talent and accepted her as his student. Seeing how pitiful her situation was, Yozo had paid for all of her tuition. Just then, Miyuki found a notebook beside the flower bed. Takehiko's name was written inside, and one of the notes contained handwritten versions of all three poems from Devil's Suite. Yuka immediately recognized the handwriting. It was definitely Mito's. Everyone had previously assumed that the three poems existed only as recordings on the tape, but apparently, there was also a written version. Kingo glanced over the poems, then turned to Hajime and challenged him to solve the mystery. Hajime immediately accepted the challenge. The next day, the weather was bright and sunny, while the entire villa echoed with the beautiful sound of a violin. Hajime, meanwhile, had stayed awake all night trying to solve the mystery. Seeing him like this, Kingo figured that he must have already cracked the case. Hajime confirmed that he had. He said that thanks to the note, he had managed to eliminate one of the suspects. Suddenly, Arisa's scream came from upstairs. Everyone rushed upstairs to check on her, only to find a cut on her arm with blood continuously flowing from the wound. Hajime noticed an arrow embedded in the wall. Kingo pointed out that the scene corresponded to a line from the third poem. Amid the song of hell, the bow is drawn and the string pulled tight, and the arrow pierces straight through the demon's body. At that moment, Yozo rushed over. He immediately began treating Arisa's wound. Meanwhile, Kingo found a bow inside Takehiko's room, with the evidence seemingly conclusive. Arisa immediately accused Takehiko of being the mastermind behind everything, claiming that his goal was to take control of the entire band. At the same time, Miyuki went to the neighboring room and asked Hajime whether Takehiko was really the killer. Hajime explained that, for now, they could only confirm that Takehiko had nothing to do with Yuri's murder. The reason could be found in the written version of Devil's Suite. According to the second poem, the killer placed a knight's helmet over Yuri's head, while several spinning tops were placed beside her, but the note clearly used the word coma. The reason was that in Japanese, the words for spinning top and game piece are pronounced exactly the same, even though they are written differently. Therefore, if Takehiko had been the killer and had actually read the written version of the poem, He should have placed game pieces beside the body instead of spinning tops. This meant that the killer must have only heard the poems on the tape and had never seen the handwritten note. Afterward, Hajime returned to Arisa's room to examine the clues again, while trying to determine the direction from which the arrow had been fired. Hajime accidentally touched the tape recorder, and the recording inside seemed to reveal another clue that could explain everything. But there was still one final question: why had the killer gone to such great lengths to recreate Mito's poems? Hajime looked toward Mito's portrait, and suddenly, he realized that the man in the portrait looked strangely familiar. At that moment, Yuka received a phone call. Earlier, she had asked someone to contact Michael's parents, who lived in France. After hanging up, Hajime found it strange. Was Michael actually French? Yuka explained that although the name Michael sounded American, it was simply his stage name because he had made his debut in the United States, and he had continued using the English name ever since. Hajime immediately took Miyuki to the library and began searching through a French dictionary. At last, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Just then, Yozo notified them that everyone was being called to the living room. Apparently, Kengo had searched everyone's rooms and eventually found Devil's Sweet inside a drawer in Takehiko's room. The sheet music was also stained with Michael's blood. Seeing this, Takehiko quickly confessed everything. He admitted that he had indeed found the sheet music beside Michael, but Michael was already dead at the time. Takehiko had simply wanted to keep Devil's Sweet for himself, so he concealed the discovery from everyone. Kengo smiled slightly and said that he had already known about it. He simply wanted Takehiko to admit it himself. As for the real killer, he would let Hajime explain. Hajime then began piecing the entire case together. First, the key found in Michael's hand was actually a dying message. Because Hajime had previously mistaken Michael for an American, he had never understood what the key meant. But now that he knew Michael was French, the truth became clear. The killer was Arisa. Kengo explained that in French, the word for key is pronounced the same way as Arisa's name in Japanese, so Michael's message was pointing directly to Arisa. Hajime added that there was another crucial clue. It was the tape he had found in Arisa's room. The tape contained the violin music everyone had been hearing over the past 2 days. As for Arisa's supposed attack, that had also been staged by Arisa herself. However, there was one thing Arisa hadn't anticipated. After firing the arrow, she should have hurriedly left the bow near the doorway. So why did the bow later end up inside Takehiko's room? The only person who could have done that was the butler, Yozo. At the time, Yozo had been on his way to bring medicine to Arisa, but he accidentally witnessed her staging the scene. Yozo immediately understood what she was trying to do. So when Arisa screamed, Yozo took the bow and hid nearby. Then, after Takehiko followed the sound out of his room, Yozo immediately entered Takehiko's room and placed the bow inside, framing him for the crime. Seeing this, Yozo finally admitted that he was the real mastermind behind the entire case. Arisa had nothing to do with the murders. Hajime then directly revealed that Arisa was actually Mito's daughter. Everyone froze in shock. Arisa was even more stunned than anyone else. Yozo slowly revealed what had happened in the past. Years ago, Mito had abandoned Arisa and her mother and traveled to America in pursuit of his musical ambitions. Years later, he became a famous composer, but when he eventually returned to Japan, he was filled with guilt over what he had done, so he secretly entrusted Yozo with supporting his daughter financially, hoping to make up for what he had done in the past. Upon learning the truth, Arisa shouted that it couldn't possibly be true. She then turned around and ran out of the villa without looking back. Everyone hurried after her, eventually following her to the area near a cliff. Just as Arisa was about to jump, Kengo asked her to answer one question first. Why had she killed Michael and Yuri? Was it because she wanted to take Mito's entire fortune and the band for herself? Arisa explained that everything had started with an accident. Michael had found the sheet music for Devil's Sweet inside the villa. He planned to publish it under his own name, claiming it as his masterpiece. Arisa was furious when she heard this and tried to stop him, but during their argument, she accidentally pushed him down the stairs, causing his death. Everything was witnessed by Yuri, who had been standing at the doorway. Yuri then used what she had seen to blackmail Arisa, demanding that she give up her right to inherit. Arisa realized that she would be controlled by Yuri forever, so she decided to kill her. Since Michael's death scene had already resembled the first poem, she decided to imitate the second poem as well, and eliminate Yuri. After explaining how she committed the crimes, Arisa jumped off the cliff. At the last possible moment, Yozo managed to grab her arm. He urged her that if she died like this, her father would surely be heartbroken, but Arisa believed that Mito was nothing more than a strict demon. A man whose eyes contained nothing but his obsession with music. Hajime, however, didn't agree. Wasn't her argument with Michael also because she couldn't bear to let him tarnish Mito's reputation? Deep down, she still respected her father. Finally, after everyone tried to persuade her, Arisa gave up on taking her own life, while they waited for the police to arrive. Takehiko played the complete version of Devil's Suite on the piano. The third poem went like this. The knight gathers his remaining strength and launches one final challenge. Amid the song of hell, he draws the bow and pulls the string. The arrow pierces straight through the demon's body. Leaving behind a desperate scream, the demon disappears. The curse of the song is broken, and the knight finds light in his heart once again. As everyone listened to the music, they couldn't help but wonder, why was the music Mito had left for his daughter so sorrowful? Kengo finally understood. The key was to add Arisa's violin accompaniment at the places marked in the sheet music. Arisa immediately picked up her violin and began playing along. In an instant, the entire piece was transformed. It was completely different from the earlier piano solo, with the violin accompaniment. It sounded like an entirely different composition. Everyone couldn't help but marvel at how beautiful the music was. As if an angel had descended upon them, the case was finally over. After thanking everyone, Arisa was taken away in a police car. However, Kengo still had one question for Hajime. How had he figured out that Arisa was Mito's daughter? Hajime replied that it was simply his intuition. He just thought that Mito in the portrait looked very similar to Arisa.